village called Fukuoka. It's not in Japan, it's in Sri Lanka. This is a story of a community that was ravaged and recovered fully from the 2004 Indian tsunami that hit this village. This is also a story of partnership and collaboration between the people of that village and the beautiful people of Fukuoka City, who gave time, energy, money, support to the recovery process. And in turn, because of gratitude, the people in Sri Lanka renamed their village into Fukuoka Village, and the relationship is still ongoing. I'm sharing this story because this is essential in the rethinking and reshaping of our concept of people and community, especially in the face of today's complex disasters that are facing the world. You know, when men and women emerge from the caves, I believe that they have exhibited within them the creativity, the ingenuity, the desire, the capacity to meet their needs in ways that are organic to them and are relevant for them. Throughout history, human beings have interacted with nature and called them human settlements or communities. And community is such a powerful concept that it evokes feelings, strong feelings of maybe belonging, of empathy, of identity, and sometimes not so good feelings if you want to get out of that particular community. And community is born out of people's common desires, common interests, common location, common challenges, and yes, even shared destiny. And you and I are all part of a community. I belong to a community, and this is called the Community of UN Habitat. And I've been with the agency for the past 10 years. But behind me and still with me are men and women who've been with the agency for, say, 20 to 30 years, and whose lives have been dedicated to working with communities and peoples all across Asia, Africa, Latin America, in a variety of projects such as water and sanitation, shelter, livelihood, in a variety of contexts such as poverty reduction. And in recent years, especially in the region of Asia Pacific, we have witnessed so many disasters and so many conflict that 85% of our work is really focused on post-disaster and post-conflict recovery. And our basic principle is to put people at the center of that development process. And particularly in the case of disaster, we put the people in the center. Why? Because it is essential to cross the psychological boundary of feeling I'm a victim, I'm hopeless, I'm overwhelmed, to a feeling of I am in power, I am in control, and I can still rebuild. And this is built, again, on the foundation that people are creative, people are desiring to rebuild their lives and properties. And I think there's the key to unleashing this potential of people are so many things, but several of them I'll highlight. The first one is really trusting in the people, believing in them. They're not, as one speaker mentioned, they're not victims, they're people. People are not defined by their circumstance, they're more than that. And the energy is there. Latent it may be, depressed it may be, but the energy to rebuild is with them. The second potential, the key to unlocking this potential of people is to have patience, because it will take time to recover. And it will be a long process, and sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow, but I think patience is very, very essential. And the third lesson that we learn is something for us, all of us here, and that is to redefine our roles. We are not in the lead. The UN is not in the lead, the government is not in the lead, not the academe, not the NGOs, none of the hackers are in the lead. We are just support. And sometimes that's the most painful thing to accept, because we as experts are used to taking the lead. But if we really take into account the recovery process, where people are put in the center of the development process or the recovery process, it will entail a rethinking of our role, all of us. And that's just the support cycle that we have found, that we have summarized over the years that we have implemented these projects. Obviously, I can't go into the technical details, but let me show you some examples of how we've done it. In Bangladesh, for instance, this is a story of people, particularly women, who have gotten together to form community groups and do their own planning. And we've been there for the past 10 years, and this is in the context of urban poverty reduction. In Afghanistan, we've been there for the past 17 years. This is a story of boys and men who are rebuilding their infrastructure that was ravaged by years of war and conflict. This is a story of people in Pakistan in 2005 when they were hit by the earthquake. They themselves built their own houses at the soonest possible time. And the transition from emergency relief to recovery was so fast and so sustainable because they themselves were there at the get-go. This is a story of a community in Banda Aceh in Indonesia that was also hit by the 2004 tsunami. And we found out when we evaluated the program that the level of satisfaction of families who were part of the process were so much more higher than those who were, say, passive recipient of humanitarian and development aid. This is an example of Myanmar that was hit in 2008 by Typhoon Nargis. And I found this photo very beautiful because it just depicts how men and women are working together in rebuilding their homes. And let me put a case for women. I think in the recovery process, we found out that women are the first responders and normally the long-term sustainers of the recovery process. And it just makes a whole lot of difference when we involve women in the process, that it has to be inclusive, because sometimes the dominant development dictum is that the recovery is in the hands of experts. And sad to say, in most cases, it's normally men. So if we put women in that space where their voices are heard, where their issues are heard and the priorities that they develop are also considered, it just provides a different tenor in the recovery process. And this is a picture from Indonesia, from Afghanistan, from Nepal, and from Sri Lanka. Now, coming home to the point, will this work in Japan? Will a people-centered, community-driven process work in Japan? And I think it will. Yes, it will. Because people are people, the same. There's no difference. And we may have to customize, but the principle remains the same. And my own personal reflection on it is that I was about to land in Narita when that earthquake happened, but then we had to go up. And I realized I learned about the earthquake through Skype and Facebook, and minutes after the thing happened. And so there are many ways. We just heard, I'm very inspired with the stories here of people organically moving and forming their own communities of experts, of technology-driven people, of healthcare workers. It's there. And I think the reflection on Japan is also, it seems that we are such in an opportune time where the best of humanity and what seems like the worst fury of nature is meeting in one place at one time. So it's an interesting time indeed to live. And I think the recovery process will really be built on from strength to strength because the Japanese are very strong, structures are strong, and therefore it may set new global standards in the recovery process. Finally, the deeper connection and integration, the most surprised how much they're loved are the Japanese. When people are organizing everywhere, and then I've talked to my Japanese friends and they say, wow, we didn't know that we are that loved. And I think this is a testimony of the many years the country and the people have been generous and have been helping out. And I think the lesson for the Japanese now, it's time to receive the love from these people. Let me close this story with this very brave fisherman, Mr. Susumu Sugawara, and this is a story I've read in CNN News. Let me just read so I can do justice to the story. When the tsunami came, everyone ran to the hills, but Sugawara ran to his boat and steered into deeper water. His boat is named Sunflower. When the first wave came, he talked to his boat and said, "You've been with me for 42 years. If I live or die, we'll be together. Then I will push on full throttle. Here was my boat, and here was the wave," he said, holding one hand low and the other stretched above his head. "I climbed the wave like a mountain. When I thought I had got to the top, the wave got even bigger." And this is a story that is so powerful in its imagery. And thanks to CNN, we've heard his story. Thanks to TED, we have the honor of honoring him today by retelling the story. This will reverberate throughout generations, not just in Japan, but in the rest of the world. And finally, I put in a picture of these two beautiful girls from Afghanistan, taken just a few weeks back by one of our managers who's working there. Are they related? Is there a direct linkage? Yes, there is. Because if we take a step back, really take a step back, and zoom out, where we can have a view of the world, maybe like this, we will realize that Sugawara and those Afghani girls are just neighbors after all in this community we call Earth. Thank you.